In February 2025, a name that sat in almost every Australian shopping centre for nearly 40 years quietly switched off its lights. Michel's Patisserie. At its peak, around 350 stores, 36 million cups of coffee a year, 9.5 million slices of cake, 4,000 people working under that sign. By the end, 19 stores were left, and one by one, they didn't even close. They were painted over, turned into a Gloria jeans or a Donut King. Here's the part nobody put on the closing down sign. The cakes in that glass cabinet hadn't been fresh for years. A former owner described them arriving frozen, and sometimes worse than frozen. Quote, disgusting. We had hair on some of them. And the franchisees? Some were told to do something with the use by dates that you need to hear in full later in this video. So here's the question this whole video answers. Michel's didn't die alone. The same owner sat on top of Donut King, Brumby's Bakery, Gloria Jeans, Crust, Pizza Capers, brands you grew up with, brands in every food court in the country. One company owned all of them while their value collapsed by more than 97%. And the name of that company is not the name you're about to guess. It's not Uber Eats. It's not the cost of living. And it's not Domino's, even though Domino's is going to show up in this story in a way you will not expect. This is the docket. Let's follow the money. Let's start with the company, because once you see it, every dead brand in this video clicks into place. It's called Retail Food Group, RFG, and for a while, it was the biggest food franchise empire this country had ever built. It listed on the Australian Stock Exchange in 2006. And then it went shopping. Over about 7 years, it swallowed roughly 10 brands. Donut King, which had been around since 1981. Brumby's Bakery since 1975. Gloria Jeans. Michel's. Crust. Pizza Capers. By 2016, it controlled more than 2,500 outlets. In September 2016, RFG shares hit $7.28. The company was worth more than $1 billion. Now hold that number, $7.28, $1 billion. Remember where it started, because of where it's about to go. By March 2019, those same shares were worth 18 cents. 18 cents, from over $1 billion in value to under 50 million. A wipeout of more than 97%. One of the great destructions of shareholder money in modern Australian retail. The question is simple. How does an empire that owns half your food court lose 97% of its value in under 3 years? The answer is the rest of this video. And it starts with the people at the very bottom. When a franchise empire grows by buying brand after brand, somebody has to pay for all that buying. And it wasn't the head office, it was the franchisees. The ordinary people who took their savings, sometimes their entire superannuation, to buy a Donut King or a Brumby's because the brand felt safe, felt Australian, felt like a sure thing. The Sydney Morning Herald investigation that cracked this open profiled a couple, John and Julie Banks. They bought a Donut King for $230,000. They then discovered the store was losing around $120,000 a year. One owner on the Sunshine Coast eventually listed her Donut King for sale for $1. Not a typo, $1 just to escape the lease and the losses. And remember those Michel's cakes? Here's where the money trail gets ugly. Money that franchisees paid into the Michel's marketing fund, money that was supposed to advertise the brand, around $22 million of it went on things that were not marketing, including, according to the regulator, the cost of switching those cakes from fresh to frozen and covering losses on company-owned stores. So the franchisees paid to advertise the brand, and the money helped pay for the thing that made the brand worse. That's not me editorializing. That's in the regulator's case, and the use-by dates I promised you. In 2019, it emerged Michel's franchisees had been instructed to extend product expiry dates by between 2 and 6 months. RFG's own explanation was that it had engaged with, quote, less than 1% of its supplier network to request shelf life extension where it was, in its words, appropriate and safe. You can decide for yourself whether a cake gets safer the longer it sits. Now, everything I've just said about losses and marketing funds, you might reasonably ask, says who? Because corporate greed killed an Aussie icon is easy to shout and hard to prove. So here's who says it, not me. The Australian Senate and the country's competition regulator. In March 2019, a parliamentary committee handed down a report into the franchising sector. It gave RFG its own chapter, and its words were blunt. It said, quote, "It appears RFG has operated a particularly unjust business model in which shareholders and senior executives have profited at the expense of franchisees. It described franchisees whose lives, in its words, had been destroyed. It accused the model of, quote, churning and burning, opening stores that were unlikely to ever be viable just to collect the upfront fees, and it recommended that 3 separate agencies investigate. Then the competition regulator, the ACCC, took RFG to the federal court. That case settled at the end of 2022. And in settling, these facts came out. RFG had sold or licensed 42 loss-making company stores to franchisees without telling them those stores were losing money. In documents, RFG had claimed it could not estimate what a store would earn, when, the regulator said, it knew exactly what each store was losing. The total settlement was around $10 million in payments and waived debts, including $5 million back to Michael's franchisees who'd paid those marketing levies, plus $500,000 towards the regulator's own legal costs. And that wasn't the only reckoning. There was a separate class action. Around 130 franchisees who said they'd been sold into a broken machine. That one settled too, with RFG releasing franchisees from historical debts. Stack it up. A parliamentary committee saying lives were destroyed. A competition regulator forcing money back into franchisees' pockets. A class action wiping out debts. 3 separate institutions looking at the same company, reaching versions of the same conclusion. When that many independent umpires blow the whistle on the same play, you stop calling it bad luck. Now, the important part, and the reason this channel can say all of this. RFG settled without admitting the allegations. So when I tell you what happened, I'm telling you what the Senate found and what the regulator alleged and what the company agreed to pay. I am not telling you what was in anyone's head. Intent is for a court. The numbers are for us. Now, you might be thinking, RFG was one rotten apple, a single greedy empire, if only it were that simple, because once you know what to look for, you start seeing the same story everywhere. Different brand, same script. Take the biggest name of all, Pizza Hut. There was a time when Pizza Hut wasn't just a pizza chain in this country. It was the pizza chain, the red roof, the all-you-can-eat buffet, the Sunday family dinner. For a generation of Australians, that was pizza. And look at it now. It got passed around like a problem nobody wanted. A private equity firm called Allegro Funds held the Australian master license, then sold it in 2023 to an American giant called Flynn Group with around 260 stores. By 2025, the company that runs it was openly talking about a revival, bringing in a new creative agency to try and get the brand back to, in their words, the lofty position it once held in Australian culture. Read that again. The king of Australian pizza now needs an agency to remind people it exists. That's not a brand. That's a memory with a logo. And one honest note, because this channel doesn't cut corners. That's the Australian arm, which is being rebuilt. Globally, it's worse. Pizza Hut went into administration in the United Kingdom in late 2025. But I'm not going to tell you your local Pizza Hut is shutting tomorrow because that's not what the evidence says. What the evidence says is the giant got small. Then there's the one that fought dirty to survive. Sumo Salad. Sumo Salad found a villain you'll recognize the second I name it, the shopping centre landlord. The rent in a food court can quietly eat a healthy business alive. So in 2017, Sumo Salad did something aggressive. It put some of its leasing companies into administration on purpose as a weapon to force the big landlords to renegotiate the rent. It didn't save them. The broader group went into voluntary administration in 2018, blaming legacy debts. And then again, in March 2022. As a national chain, it has all but vanished. And the most recent one, the one that tells you this is still happening right now. Taco Bell. Taco Bell was run in Australia by Collins Foods, the same company that runs KFC here. And in 2025, Collins Foods announced it was getting out, pulling the plug on Taco Bell in Australia. And the reason they gave is the reason this entire video has been building towards. They said, in plain terms, they couldn't compete against a much larger rival. The name of that rival is the same name we're going to end on. Hold it for 60 more seconds. 3 brands. Three completely different stories: a fallen king, a tenant at war with its landlord, and an American import that gave up. But underneath all three, the same forces: debt, rent, fees, and a competitor who simply did it better. Which brings us to the twist nobody saw coming. Now, here's where this story turns, and turns hard. Because while RFG was the villain inside the food court, there was a different giant outside it that everyone blamed for killing the little guys. The chain that supposedly bulldozed every independent pizza shop in the country: Domino's. For years, Domino's was the predator. It opened stores on top of stores, a strategy critics called fortressing, squeezing rivals until they couldn't breathe. We'll get to one of those rivals in a minute, and it's the most nostalgic name in this whole video. But here's what nobody saw coming. In 2025, Domino's Pizza Enterprises, the Australian listed company that runs the brand across this region, posted its first annual loss since it floated on the stock market 2 decades ago, a statutory net loss of $3.7 million for the year ending June 2025. The year before, it had made a profit of more than $90 million. That's how fast the floor can fall out. And the warning signs came early. Halfway through the year, it had already announced it was closing 205 loss-making stores, mostly in Japan, and took a hit of more than $115 million in restructuring costs in that half alone. By the time the full year was done, the closures had climbed to 312 outlets, with over $160 million in one-off costs. Its shares at one point crashed around 20% in a single day, down to levels not seen in years. The chief executive, Mark Van Dyke, on his way out. The founder, Jack Cowan, stepped back in. The chief executive on the way out. The predator is now bleeding. Rising costs. Delivery platforms taking their cut. And new competitors eating its lunch, including one we'll end this video on. A quick honest note, because this channel doesn't do fake drama. Most of that pain is overseas, especially in Japan. Here in Australia, sales held up better. So Domino's isn't dying. But the untouchable giant that everyone feared? It just had the worst year of its public life. The hunter found out what it's like to be hunted. And if you want to know what it looks like when the hunter wins completely, you have to go back to the one name in this video that makes a certain generation of Australians go quiet. Eagle Boys. If you're under 25, you might not remember it. If you're older, you remember the pink. That pink glow. The blind taste tests where they dared you to pick them over Domino's and Pizza Hut. The Vote One Full-Size Large Pizza campaign. It started in 1987 in Albury with a bloke named Tom Potter and a $70,000 loan from his mum. From a single shop, it grew to around 340 stores, the third biggest pizza chain in the country. And then the price war came. Domino's and Pizza Hut drove the cost of a pizza down to a level Eagle Boys couldn't match. Delivery apps started rising. The bank tightened the screws. In July 2016, Eagle Boys collapsed into administration owing around $30 million. And who bought the corpse? Pizza Hut. It picked up dozens of the sites and painted over them. The pink glow went dark. That's the parable. A chain that started with a mum's loan and a dream, killed by a price war it didn't start. This is how these things actually die, not in one dramatic moment, quietly, a few stores at a time. Until one day the sign comes down and you realize you can't remember the last time you went in. But there's one killer in this story we keep dancing around. And unlike a private equity firm in a glass tower, this one is sitting in your pocket right now. The delivery apps. Here's the maths nobody does when they tap order. When you buy a meal through one of the big delivery platforms, the restaurant doesn't keep what you pay. The app takes a commission, and that commission runs as high as 30% of the order. 30%. And once you add in the cost of being seen in the app, the markups, the promotions you have to run just to show up, the real bite can land closer to 35, even 40% of the order. Now sit with that, because the restaurant industry, even a well-run one, often works on a net margin under 10%, under 10 cents of profit on every dollar. And the app is taking 30 cents off the top before the owner pays for the food, the staff, the rent, the power, the insurance. You don't have to be an accountant to see the problem. The platform can be the most profitable part of your dinner, and it never turned on a single oven. Industry voices have described those commissions as effectively wiping out small business margins entirely, And here's the trap that makes it inescapable. You can refuse to join the apps, and then you're invisible to a generation that orders everything by phone. Or you join, and you hand over a third of every sale. Both doors lead to the same place. That's why Eagle Boys felt them rising back in 2016. That's why Domino's blames them today. The apps didn't invent the squeeze. They just made it permanent. So next time a local shop you love disappears, before you blame the owner, check how you ordered from them. Now I have to be honest with you because this channel doesn't sell you a panic it can't back up. You'd think, after everything in this video, that the whole industry is collapsing. The data says something stranger. On one hand, it's brutal out there. According to one of the country's main business risk trackers, a record 1 in 10 hospitality businesses in Australia shut down over the past year. Food and beverage was ranked the single most at-risk industry in the country, with a failure rate of 7.5%. The worst of any sector, 1 in 10. That's not a slump. That's a cull. But here's the part that should stop you. In that very same period, the fast food sector as a whole didn't shrink. It grew. One major industry report tracking thousands of locations found the quick service sector added a net 250 stores in a single year, more than 350 openings against around 100 closures. The strongest year of net growth on record. So which is it? Are they dying or thriving? Both. At the same time. And that contradiction is the whole point of this video. Because if the entire industry were dying, you could blame the economy and move on. But the economy didn't close 1 in 10 doors while opening hundreds of new ones at random. Something was choosing. Something was deciding who lived and who died. And that something has a name. Its name isn't a villain in a tower or an app or a recession. It's something simpler and harder to forgive. Because here's the proof that none of the easy excuses hold up. If it were really the cost of living, or the apps, or Australians just giving up on eating out, then nobody could have survived these last few years. So let me show you someone who didn't just survive. They got rich. In June 2024, an Australian fast food chain floated on the stock market in the biggest restaurant listing this country has ever seen. On day one, its shares jumped 36%. It was valued at around $3 billion. Guzman y Gomez started in a single shop in Newtown in 2006. The same year, RFG listed and started buying up your food court. Same country, same cost of living, same delivery app fees, same wage bills, same rents. One empire lost 97% of its value. The other became a $3 billion success in under 20 years. So when someone tells you the Aussie food chains died because of the economy, ask them why the economy was so kind to the one that was actually run well. The chains in this video weren't killed by the cost of living. Not really. Michael's wasn't killed by Uber Eats. They were loaded with debt, squeezed for fees, and run for the people at the top instead of the people behind the counter. And then, when the brand was hollow, the customers finally noticed the cake wasn't fresh. That's the difference between a chain that's dying and a chain that's growing. It was never the market, it was the management. Here's the one I want you to settle in the comments. Of all the brands in this video, Michael's, Donut King, Brumby's, Eagle Boys, which one do you actually miss and which one deserved to go? Tell me below. I read them. This was the docket, the truth behind your receipt. If this changed how you see your local food court, subscribe, because next time you walk past an empty shopfront, you'll know exactly what to look for.